Good morning, my name's Bernard. I'm a volunteer here at Green Roots. The idea of Green Roots as a project is to provide a range of horticultural skills and experience for students with learning difficulties. And by developing those skills, specific horticultural skills, but also skills of communication, team building, interpersonal skills and so on, to provide the opportunities for our students to move on to supported employment opportunities. The purpose of today is to take a look around the garden and see some of the students at work, to see some of the volunteer workers in the garden also at work. Many of our students first learn about Green Roots while they're still at school. In some cases, young people will come first of all to Green Roots as part of a work experience programme which marries in with the curriculum that they're already following at school. Other students learn about the project here because they come and visit the garden as part of an induction programme which allows them to see in practice what takes place in the garden, and they can decide whether that's a route after leaving school that they feel they would benefit from. Can I join you for a couple of minutes?
Yeah.
So, we're in one of the teaching beds now, one of the vegetable beds within the garden. What are we doing just now?
I'll turn this around a bit.
Okay. So why are we doing that?
So the roots can go on the bed a bit more.
Quite typically of what goes on a day-to-day basis in the garden, you can see a group at work behind me at the top of the beds there. The group that you can see contains a number of our students, and it also contains one of our tutors. What's really interesting, to me at least anyway, is the great range of backgrounds that our volunteers come from and what they feel they're able to contribute to the garden, and also in turn what they feel they're able to learn from working at Green Roots. How did you first find out about Green Roots?
It was through a website called Trellis,
Uh-huh.
who are advertising for positions for sessional workers,
Right.
and I was just finishing a job in Glasgow,
Uh-huh.
doing something similar. I think I've developed a lot of teaching skills. Everyone's here is learning, a lot of students are at different stages of their development, and anyone that comes to volunteer can just pick up and learn as they go.
I don't have a huge horticultural background beyond the sort of basics, but I've done a little bit of work as a tutor. I like learning new things at the same time as helping others.
So it's not been a kind of barrier to enjoying things here in terms of not having necessarily the strongest of horticultural backgrounds?
No, I mean I feel like it actually helps because the students teach me as much as I'm helping them.
Well, I retired early from my job, which was working with adults and adult learning in a community setting. This was a good way, once I found Green Roots, to actually try and combine the two.
Right.
So my love of gardening with my love of working with people who still want to learn, looking at the sort of things they like doing and trying to support them in being able to do that, and we can both learn together.
The sound you can hear in the background just now is our tractor. It's on its way to work this afternoon. Students enjoy using the tractor. Gives them a range of skills which they might not necessarily learn outside of the garden. Gives them a range of skills that are transferable possibly to areas of employment once they leave the garden. And in many cases, being able to drive an item of machinery under controlled, safe, supervised conditions is a great bonus to the confidence and self-esteem of young people. Part of the garden that you can see behind me is what we've called a model garden, and the purpose of the model garden is to provide a range of gardening environments that would be those most suited, if you like, to developing the kind of horticultural hard landscaping skills that our students might well find useful when they leave the garden after 4 or 5 years. Because at the end of the day, the likelihood is that many of our students would move into work of a horticultural nature that might involve maintaining, gardening, improving in public open spaces, school grounds, parks and so on. So what we really wanted to have available on the garden was a range of environments that would allow those kinds of skills to be developed. The garden is very much designed to meet environmental criteria. It's an organic garden. So for example, the office that you can see behind me has its green roof. It also contains quite high spec insulation to ensure energy conservation, heat conservation and so on. Another thing that's really quite important about the garden is that the work of the project in terms of supporting students is largely funded through the service contracts that we have with local authorities such as Stirling Council. But for us to be able to develop beyond that basic service provision, we also do depend very strongly, very highly on grants, donations, various types of fundraising, but also the support that we receive from the local community in terms of residents, but also local businesses. So for example, the materials for the office area are largely supplied by Ogilvy's, who are a large local employer. They also provided a lot in terms of manpower and technical expertise in the building of the office. And indeed, we also had help from other local community groups in terms of the completion of the work within the office itself. One of the reasons that plants grow so well within the garden here is, first of all, its enclosed nature. Much of the garden is a walled garden, and also the fact that the garden faces south. But as well as being beneficial to the cultivated plants within the garden, it also means that round about the garden are quite extensive areas of wildflowers, flowering plants and so on, which form a source of food for bees. There are now 6 independent colonies of bees established outside the garden, and they are of direct benefit inside the garden because the bees obviously help very much in the process of pollinating plants. Students were involved in slabbing and paving and gravelling and fencing round the beekeeping areas. Potentially the bee colonies are a resource for local school children as part of their environmental studies programmes. Another area of development within the garden recently has been the growth of aspects of animal husbandry. Students themselves have identified a desire to have the kind of opportunity to work with farm animals, and the route that we've developed there is to raise sheep. There's a whole new battery of skills available to students here. First and foremost for many students is the self-confidence that they're able to gain by working closely with animals. There are the basic skills of tending, feeding, moving, basic medical care, veterinary care for animals, which students are able to take part in. And they're also able to see the link between the garden, the farm and the wider world, if you like. I think we've seen several times this morning a big focus on how learning takes place in the garden, and we've certainly seen examples this morning of students working with volunteers, working with tutors and learning new skills as they do that. When we talked to Emily and Roberta, they both highlighted the fact that through working at the garden they feel that they've learned new skills from working with students. Another type of learning that is very, very important within the garden is students learning from students, in other words peer learning, where in fact students share their expertise or their interests with each other to the benefit of their colleagues.
What's this? Is that the peer thing? No. That's how you go.
There's lots of ways that you can volunteer to support Green Roots. You can volunteer by actually working in the garden with our students, or indeed you can volunteer in other ways through donations, through offering technical expertise, professional help and so on. What would be your advice to anyone who's maybe thinking of volunteering to come here?
Oh, come along. And it's not even scary the first time you come, because people will make you a cup of tea or coffee and sit you down and smile at you. And the students are always very welcoming.